and who, well, Donald Trump was president.
That's correct.
And who was this assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York warning?
I believe others in the Department of Justice.
And what were they warning others in the Department of Justice?
Alex chimes in. The specific recipient's name also redacted, but in the Department of Justice, warning them that they didn't want to be caught off guard by information they had now uncovered that Donald Trump had been on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane more often than they had first believed. And some of those flights included family, but others included, in one flight, it appears to be a 20-year-old woman whose name is redacted. We don't know who that is. And then in this other case, two witnesses.
A 20-year-old woman with Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump.
That's correct.
Those were the three people that this DOJ document says.
Yeah.
These were three people on that flight.
Yeah, 20-year-old. I guess we don't actually know that it's a woman.
Oh, 20-year-old.
20-year-old with three people on the flight. Epstein, Trump, and this 20-year-old.
Okay.
And then there's another flight in which Epstein and Trump were on board, as well as with two people who were possible witnesses to the Maxwell case.
Okay, so that would have been Trump, Epstein, and two people. Did it say women or just two people that would have been
women? That one we do know are women.
Two women that might be witnesses to the Maxwell case, which in 2020 was that case just starting.
That case was underway but had not been charged.
On the way, but had not been charged. So let me ask you.
How close to charging? When did that?
I don't really know the date.
Hey, Alex, can you get us a charging date for Maxwell?
On the brink of the charges, or was it?
Yeah, we'll find out.
Okay, he's working on it. Okay, another question. So, the DOJ, or the Southern District of New York, an assistant DA, is warning the Justice Department in 2020, hey, we don't want to blindside you. But Donald Trump ended up flying on Epstein's jet a lot more than any of us expected. And we wanted to give you the heads up.
Or has been reported.
Or has been reported. That was 5 years ago?
Almost 6.
Almost 6 years ago? Why are we just learning about that now?
That's a great question. Alex, I think, has an update for us on.
Alex?
The charge was July 2020, so this is 6 months prior.
It's close.
So it's yeah.
They would have been basically. This is an AUSA just to suggest what's obvious here. They're about to prepare charges to charge Ghislaine Maxwell, and the AUSA here is basically saying to Main Justice, who the AUSA works for in some sense.
In the last couple of weeks of the Trump term.
Yes, in the last couple of weeks.
No, January 2020.
Yeah, January 2020.
Right, so
just actually at the start of the 2020 presidential election.
That's right.
Is saying to Main Justice, his bosses, effectively, hey, we're getting ready to charge Ghislaine Maxwell. As we're looking at the evidence, here is something you need to be aware of. We have discovered, again, according to this thing, that we've discovered that there are more instances that Trump flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane that's been publicly reported. We're about to charge Ghislaine Maxwell. These are potential witnesses. This might come to light in the year of a presidential campaign. Just to point out, this is January 2020, so the political context is Trump's re-election campaign. Of course, we're also 2 months before COVID kicked in, so we didn't know that was about to happen. But that's what this is suggestive of. And I think that's the proper context.
So Amy, there has been such blowback on the Hill from Republicans. Yeah. And of course, Ro Khanna, a Democrat, came on yesterday saying a couple of things. One, reminding us that the vote to release all of these files was 427 to 1. Yeah. And also reminding us that Republicans were coming up to both he and Thomas Massie saying, hey, you guys don't have to do this. We would prefer the way this went down was that we pressured Donald Trump to fire Pam Bondi. This coming out and, coming out on December 23rd, I would say if you want to release bad information, December 23rd is a very good day to bury something like this. But what impact is this going to have with especially we know how Democrats are going to respond, but especially Republicans on the Hill?
Huge impact. I mean, let's not forget that the Speaker of the House dismissed the House in July to basically sweep this under the rug. We forget about that now, but they did not want this out there. And now it's out there. Republicans are kind of caught. They've always been a little bit in turmoil over this issue. you. It wasn't a good look for them. Democrats have been winning in a lot of ways. This is not great for them, and they know it. And this is why they always wanted to kind of just sweep past it. And here we are. And so this is the epitome of a Friday news dump, just holiday edition.
I think it's worse than that. Just remind yourselves of one thing that happened last week, which we may have all forgotten it right now. So Donald Trump last week declared that this year, December 24th and December 26th are federal holidays. So we're not just doing a news. We didn't just wait until the day on the 23rd. The president last week generously, beneficently said, you know what, the 24th and the 26th will be federal holidays too. So we have.
And we thank him for that.
We thank you for that.
And by the way, if next year he wants to make the 23rd and the 27th a holiday, I'm not complaining.
Well, but it kind of makes this drop on the 23rd. I mean, talk about a news dump. Hey, we're gonna have 5 straight days of holidays here, but you know, the prayer is by the time we get to the 29th, everyone will have forgotten.
Well, this will be forever though.
As far as,
and Amy brings up a great point, Pablo, that the speaker was so freaked out by this that he sent Congress home for how many weeks? He did it again this past week. You know, he did it this past week because he didn't want them to be around when everything was dumped on Friday. A couple other things happened. Dan Bongino, I can't ever pronounce his last name. Bongino.
One of our great podcasters.
Dan Bongino, a former and future
That's right.
podcaster, but Dan stepped down and announced he was stepping down, I think in part because, you know, yeah, he said a lot of crazy things on the air, but in that position, in many ways, he has towed the line, and he was the one pushing. He was angry about Bondi not releasing these documents. Don't think he wanted any part of that. You had Elise Stefanik saying, I'm out. You had the senator from Wyoming saying, I'm out. This is, you know,
Marjorie Taylor Greene saying.
Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, I'm out. I mean, this is just such a bad look for Republicans who have been dragging their feet on this. Well, their base, not lefties in San Francisco, but their base has been pushing for this for years. And now we find out that we had these very embarrassing emails, whether they mean anything at the end of the day or not legally. I doubt they will, but still very embarrassing emails that they've been sitting on for 5 years. Biden sat on it for 4 years. I'm not sure why. But the Trump administration sat on it all of 2020 and all of 2025.
If you were to look up the phrase being hoisted on your own petard, you would see the documentary you've just described, in which there are binders at a press conference saying, you know, here we are, we're finally all doing it. The podcasters you elected to run the nation's foremost intelligence services are going to get to the bottom of this. And then the dog caught the car. And we discover what's inside of it, right? And so what it feels like, and you're right, criminally and politically are two different adverbs.
By the way, the dog caught the car, yes, but they did nothing about it for a year now.
We were told the dog wanted nothing more than to catch the car.
Just wanted to catch the car.
And now we're looking at the trunk.
This dog wants the car, wants to see what's in the trunk, but then didn't look in the trunk.
And now everyone else who's watching this metaphor is thinking to themselves, are we taking an IQ test? Are we being told one thing and watching another? And what does it say if the base you describe is going to say, you know what, there's nothing to see here? And I think that's where, when Ro Khanna was sitting right there yesterday, he's talking about Pam Bondi and potential charges of contempt. And he's talking about the reconfiguration of the bipartisan dynamic of this country. Here you have, at the center of the Venn diagram, a thing that's hard to deny. The social network.
How do you release pictures of Bill Clinton in a hot tub and don't release these emails on Friday? And by the way, what is redacted? Like, there is a law now on the book saying you have to let us see the Epstein files. You can't redact hundreds of pages. You can redact names, but you cannot redact hundreds of pages in this report.
No, it is an incomplete release, which is why so many Republicans were upset at the time as well, including some staunch Trump allies. To your point of a moment ago, let's remember AOC tweeted middle of last week saying that all political developments for the rest of the week should be viewed in the light of the fact that the Epstein files should be released on Friday, explaining why the House was sent home. She saw it coming. She's like, that's why we're doing this, because bad stuff's about to come out. And I want to also I think it's worth reiterating how we started this hour is how this was released. A tweet by the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice, acting like Trump's personal attorney, says, I'm just going to read this, quote, some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI.
How do they know that?
Yeah, exactly right. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they had any shred of
How do they know that?
They don't. But here's their kicker, is they say,
their answer.
If they were true, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. So this is, again, the Department of Justice. That's why you can't believe anything in
By the way, confessing that if they had anything, John Heilman, to weaponize against Democrats, they would have released it. But as Susie Wiles said, there's nothing that Bill Clinton did that's illegal in there. So, but they're saying, oh, well, another administration certainly would have done it. So basically saying, if we had any dirt on any Democrats, you would have seen it by now. But all we got is Bill Clinton in a hot tub.
Projection and confession.
Projection
all rolled up
and
into one.
confession.
All rolled up into one.
This is the Daily Double.
They would say that we don't practice lawfare. Only Democrats do.
That's all they
would
do.
say.
That's all they've been doing. That's all they've been doing.
Obviously ludicrous. Here's the question: as we play this out, right? To go back to the Donald Trump and the federal holidays, the timing. Why did they not release them on Friday? They did not release them because it's part of a strategy to do this on the 23rd. There's standards that are set out in that law for redactions, to your point, Joe, and there's also a review process. So the DOJ knows that Democrats and Republicans on the Hill,
it's going to get out.
If they're unsatisfied with the redactions, think that it's been overly redacted, they will challenge that. They'll have to challenge it in court. All of this is part of the same strategy, and I will point out, this is something you and I have pointed out 100 times now.
Yeah.
The same failed strategy.
Failed.
To try to kick the can down the road.
This
strategy on the Hill, in the White House, in the DOJ, from day one has been, how do we push this as far down the field as possible? That's what they're doing now. Now there'll have to be a court hearing. Someone will have to charge it. We'll have to complain about the redactions. It'll have to go to court. There will be a review. And they're just praying
it's so stupid.
that it's all going to lessen the pressure and the damage.
Every time I walk past a TV screen that has Jeffrey Epstein's face on it, I go, why? Why didn't they release all this 6 months ago and kill this story?
Yeah.
That's what any first-year PR student at any college in America would tell you. Don't let the story go on and on and on. And every decision they have made inside the White House and inside the Justice Department has done nothing but keep this story alive. If there were a grown-up involved in this process, they would walk in. Well, let's just say James A. Baker III. Would go in.
James Addison Baker III?
James Addison Baker III.
James Addison Baker III.
He would say, Mr. President, you may not like this, but we're going to release all this shit on January the 1st, and it's going to be an ugly 2 weeks. But on January the 15th, we're going to be talking about what you want to talk about instead of those libs at MS Now and the old New York Times building want to talk about.
Now you're starting to sound like
Mr.
him.
President.
Now you're starting to sound like him.
But if you keep just like doing a little nick, you're going to be bleeding out for the next 3 years.
You know what's fascinating, though, is that
That's pretty good. James Baker III.
Really good, really good. It is more of his Texas mode rather than his DC.
That's kind of, I'm not really good at
humble
it,
country
but that's
lawyer.
basically what James Baker III would say, because he was the best at this.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, if Susie Wiles, who learned like from the master, had the ability to tell Donald Trump that, I'm sure she'd tell him that, because every chief of staff would say, get this behind you now. But they won't.
No. And what's really interesting is that the White House their sole focus has been on Bill Clinton. You look at the press secretary, you look at the communications director, it was all Bill Clinton. And, you know, Donald Trump himself said Bill Clinton flew on this plane like 27 or 28 times.
We knew that. Bill Clinton was in hot tubs. We knew that. I mean, this is not surprising to all of us. We knew this.
And in the end,
we knew this.
Who cares? Bill Clinton is not the titular head of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Bill Clinton, whatever Bill Clinton
Right.
did, has nothing to do with the fate of Democrats in Congress going forward. This is the other part of this and the extension of this story. They've now pushed this story into the midterm election year. If you think about one of the driving dynamics right now, which is the divergence of Donald Trump's interests and Capitol Hill Republicans' interests, he is again doing what he's been doing throughout, which is it might benefit, in some sense, Donald Trump. There's a theory, at least, in the Justice Department, in the White House, that by kicking the can down the road, it will lessen the heat on Trump. It's just going to drag this story into the middle.
No, it won't.
But even if it did, he's just basically saying, I don't care about House Republicans.
It's
like just
bad.
whatever happens to you guys, I don't care if it stretches out all the way till next summer.
Bad politics for everybody. We're going to keep talking about this, but first, let's bring in the co-anchor of CNBC's Squawk Box. He's a very busy man, bestseller, New York Times columnist. Like he's on every book of the year list. It seems 1929, and I must say, Ed Luce is big. You two guys control all the best the best books of the year list.
Is he on the Trump reading list this year? Doesn't Trump put out a holiday reading list?
I think
right at the top.
I think that's Barack Obama.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure. So anyway, I had something in the prompter here. We don't read prompter very well, but something about Visa reporting that consumers. Can I get that back in the prompter so I know exactly what I'm going to ask Andrew? Because it's like a Perry Mason thing. You never ask a question that you don't know the answer to. So hey, you know what? I was just remembering that a new report from Visa finds that U.S. consumers this year. Did you hear about this?
I did.
They drove up retail spending more than 4% from last season. In-store shopping, I was really shocked to find this out, accounts for 73% of the purchases. Well, the rest were made online, but e-commerce appears to be where most of the growth is happening. It's certainly how it's happening in my house. But let's just say, with all of us kind of trying to sort through how the economy's doing, this is good news. 4% better than last year. That's something we can look at and go, it's pretty good. Yes or no?
It's great news, and in fact, we got two actually stats this morning. The Visa news on one end, which is very helpful, and then we got Q3 numbers for the economy on the other. That actually just came out at 8:30 this morning, and overshot by a large expectation. We were supposed to get that number, by the way, back in October, but because of what was happening with the government shutdown and the other issues, we didn't. But nonetheless, that number is huge, 4.3% on GDP. So you have, I think, what looks increasingly like a surprisingly healthy economy, actually perhaps more healthy than we've given it credit for.
Andrew? We do need a caveat here, and I'm sure we'll figure this out later, but I know a lot of spending has been driven by the richest of the rich, and that's artificially pushed that number up. So we'll have to sort through this, but if that 4% is broad-based, that's really good news.
No, it's really good news. But it's very interesting because you've heard the president try to say the economy is doing great, yet at the same time, he's suggested that we need to have a lot lower interest rates to effectively try to, push up the economy. Interestingly, these numbers between the spending numbers you're talking about and the GDP numbers that came out this morning, the stock market, and this is just the perverse part about how the stock market works, is actually lower on the back of this news. Why? Because people are now saying, well, the expectation that the Federal Reserve is going to lower interest rates the way the president has wanted is less likely, at least in the short term. So, it's always what's good news is bad news, and what's bad news is good news.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you, Andrew. By the way, the numbers, I mean, if the 4.2% again is broad-based and GDP growing by 4%, that's all incredible news. Not incredible news for people who want interest rates to be lower, because the last thing you want is to make the economy too hot. So we'll see how that sits. Let me ask you, I'm just curious. We're asking this in the newsletter. I'd love to get your answer. What's your favorite holiday gift ever? Your favorite Christmas gift, your favorite Hanukkah gift, your favorite, we'll just say, December gift?
Okay, so it's actually a gift I was given by my wife a couple of years ago. I have no affiliate link for this, so I get nothing for it. And anyone who's in the morning TV business will appreciate this.
Yeah.
I got what's called an 8-sleep mattress cover. Do you know what that is, Joe?
I have no idea. I'm about to find out.
Okay,
What is it?
8 hours of sleep is it's 8 sleep is
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mayday Network. My name is Michelle Kinney. I'm here with Julie Roginski, and we wanted to bring you some information that has been making the rounds on the internet, at least through social media. If you don't know already, there was a segment that was supposed to and was scheduled to air on 60 Minutes last night, but it was pulled last minute by CBS News editor-in-chief. Again, just stay with us. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and play this.
You may recall earlier.
Sorry, guys. Let's try this again.
You may recall earlier this year when the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelan men to El Salvador, a country most had no connection to. The White House claimed the men were terrorists, part of a violent gang, and invoked a centuries-old wartime power, saying it allowed them to deport some men immediately without due process. An unusual strategy that sparked an ongoing legal battle. Tonight, you'll hear from some of those men. They describe torture, sexual and physical abuse inside CICOT, one of El Salvador's harshest prisons, where they say they endured 4 months of hell. It began as soon as the planes landed. The deportees thought they were headed back to Venezuela, but then saw hundreds of Salvadoran police waiting for them on the tarmac. Shackled, they were paraded in front of cameras, pushed onto buses, and delivered to CICOT, El Salvador's notorious maximum security prison.
En el momento que llegamos, el director del SECOT.
When we got there, the SECOT director was talking to us.
Y lo principal,
The first thing he told us was that we would never see the light of day or night again.
el día ni la de la noche.
He said, "Welcome to hell. I'll make sure you never leave."
Did you think you were going to die there?
We thought we were already the living dead, honestly.
We met Luis Munoz Pinto in Colombia. He was a college student in repressive Venezuela and hoped to seek asylum in the United States. In 2024, he says he waited in Mexico until his scheduled appointment with U.S. Customs and Border Protection in California. During that interview,
Me analizaron.
They just looked at me and told me I was a danger to society.
you have no criminal record.
No tengo.
I never even got a traffic ticket.
Nevertheless, he was detained by Customs. He says he spent 6 months locked up in the U.S., waiting for a decision on his asylum case when he was deported. One of 252 Venezuelans sent to CICOT between March and April. Inside, he says their hands and feet were tied, forced to their knees, their heads were shaved.
There was blood everywhere, screams, people crying, people who couldn't take it and were urinating and vomiting on themselves.
Ya no hacía falta
When you get there, you already know you're in hell.
You may recall earlier this year when the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelan men to El Salvador, a country most had no connection to. The White House claimed the men were terrorists, part of a violent gang, and invoked a centuries-old wartime power, saying it allowed them to deport some men immediately without due process. An unusual strategy that sparked an ongoing legal battle. Tonight, you'll hear from some of those men. They describe torture, sexual and physical abuse inside CICOT, one of El Salvador's harshest prisons, where they say they endured